are now tuned in to the TMS podcast. Here's your host, Jay Curtis Strickland.
Welcome, my friends. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Click on that bell for notifications. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, give us a follow and give us a rating. That would be most excellent. I have a merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Co. Going over to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. Use the code podcast for 20% off your entire order. Find Bella Canvas Next Level Tri-Blend t-shirts. They feel amazing. If you like movies, if you like hardcore, that's what we do there. And I know you hardcore kids have money because you're always buying merch and stuff like that. So go on over and help support the little guy every once in a while. My other company, 10th Canto, they're an imprint of Hell's Heart. They also do Krishna conscious design. So if you're into yoga or spirituality, we are now doing all of our proceeds towards the Tompkins Square food project up in New York City for the homeless. So it goes to a good cause. Please support. You'd be really awesome if you did that. All right. Tonight's guest may call Massachusetts home, but she's Jersey through and through. Her love of music began with the Beatles' Rubber Soul spinning in her childhood and grew into a lifelong passion that eventually found its heartbeat in punk rock. A devoted Star Wars fan who enjoys reading, dancing, golf, and cooking, especially her famous Jersey Girl pizza for her husband and 3 boys. She also holds degrees in marine biology, organic chemistry, a PhD from the prestigious New Jersey Institute of Profanity. I think I went there for about a semester and spent more than 25 years teaching middle school science. Now she's adding writer to her resume. We're very glad she's here tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, Cameran Sassman.
I don't care, you're into it bad. Got so much hatred, I'm into it bad. I want that camera on too and let them understand. If you stand with me when you're ready, I'll play. If we can walk, together what can be wrong. Together we can walk, together what can be wrong. Together.
Thank you so much for being here, Cameran.
Hey, Jay, thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. What's going on with you today on this wonderful Sunday?
Oh, freezing my fucking ass off in New England. I'm so
Yeah?
done with this winter. It's been a long one.
You got the stinking weather up there like we do?
Oh, it's awful. It's just
Yeah.
cold and snowy, and the dog doesn't want to go out. I don't want to go outside. It's like, let's get some sunshine going.
Did you get that massive blizzard that the whole rest of the country got?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we
Yeah.
had over 2 feet of snow, and then a week later we got another 8 inches, and it's been nonstop. It's brutal.
Yeah, I can only imagine that living up there. You know, we kind of get the I want to say like the not. We get it every so often, you know, but not probably as bad as the Northeast does, you know. So, wonderful. Well, yeah, it's kind of shitty here too today as well. But you know, my first question that I like to ask to everybody is, what was your relationship with music growing up? Like, what was it like growing up in your household? What were you hearing when you were a kid? And what was one of your first music live memories? Like, what did you go and see that wasn't hardcore? And then when you did get into hardcore and punk, what was the first show experience that you had with that?
Okay. So I think you mentioned in my intro, like it all kind of started for me with Rubber Soul. I just have vivid memories of my mother playing Rubber Soul for me on our turntable. I was probably 3. We were living in our little house in Edison, New Jersey, and I think it was Norwegian Wood was the song that really got me. I don't know if it was something about the sound of the sitar was just like so sweet and interesting. And I just remember asking her to play that over and over again. And like the funny thing is, like, I don't think my mother was a big Beatles fan, but we had a couple Beatles albums, and that was the one I gravitated towards. So for me, that's kind of where my lifelong love affair with the Beatles started, and I'm still a huge fan to this day. But later in life, like I've always enjoyed music, and I can remember in 3rd grade, I got my first little cassette player recorder, And, I would take it and I would hold it up to the radio and record, the top 40 countdown or whatever. So I've just always gravitated to music and all different kinds. As far as my first live show, it was the Monkees at Great Adventure in New Jersey. It was around, I think around like 86, maybe. It was the summer before my freshman year in high school, and the Monkees had made a big comeback on MTV because they were playing all the reruns. And so they were back out and they were touring. And so as soon as I found out they were going to Great Adventure, I was like, okay, we are going to Great Adventure. So I went with my best friend at the time, and we were like front row, and they recorded a video for That Was Then, This Is Now. So you can't see us in there, but I know I was in there.
Okay.
So that was like my first concert. And then I think 10th grade, I went to see Sting at the Spectrum in Philadelphia for his Nothing Like the Sun tour. And he's just such an incredible musician. And all the musicians around him are all like, classically trained jazz musicians. It was a tremendous show. But my first hardcore show was at City Gardens in 1988. So I had fallen in love with punk rock probably around 8th grade. But because I didn't drive yet, I didn't get to go to City Gardens until I had friends who could drive. So, early on when I first got into that music, it was the Dead Milkmen were kind of like, I call them my gateway drug, because that kind of brought me into this whole different genre of music that, not everybody else was listening to. I mean, because at the time it was Prince and Madonna and Michael Jackson and, who were great artists. But at the same time, it's like pop music, aside from the Beatles, didn't always resonate with me. I liked things that were different. I think in middle school, I started getting into like the B-52s and a little bit of the Sex Pistols. But in 8th grade, a friend of mine introduced me to the Dead Milkmen. She was singing Bitchin' Camaro while we were waiting for the bus after school one day. I was like, what was that? I need more. So she made me a mixtape, Big Lizard in My Backyard, and I just kind of dove in from there. So, I slowly was, getting into the scene, and I had a couple friends, and one of my best friends was dating a skater boy, and he kind of introduced me more into like the straight edge hardcore. So, we were listening to a lot of like Youth of Today and 7 Seconds and Minor Threat and, those kind of hardcore bands. So I was really kind of, I think, on the tail end of like the American hardcore movement. But it was 1988, August of 1988, that I went to my first show, all ages show at City Gardens. And that night I saw The Mentors, Murphy's Law, and Guar. And I was not prepared at all.
No one is.
No way did I see any of that coming. It was just like one of those nights to remember. And that's kind of where I started my story off. So I recount that first big show. And, at that time of my life, like being a typical teenager, like my parents had no idea that I was going into like a really seedy, unsafe part of Trenton. And I don't think they would have approved of the music at the time either. But it was truly a night to remember, and I remember it fondly.
When you went and saw Guar, did you? Well, okay, so because a lot of people will sometimes be like, eat. They have the monster and they'll feed people into the monster or whatever. Like, did you ever experience that, or anybody at the show, or anybody you know?
Experienced that. We saw a simulated abortion, and they ate the baby. So there was that.
Yeah.
I believe it was Odorous Arungus at the time had the giant fake prosthetic penis and sprayed it all over the and, like me and my best friend Michelle, we were absolutely horrified. Like, what have we gotten ourselves into? Like, I just, yeah, was not ready for that, but maybe
Yeah,
good
I
story, right?
oh yeah, absolutely. And you said you weren't ready for it. Yeah, I don't think anybody really truly is unless they have some sort of familiarity with Guar, And to rewind a little bit, I understand that you're a Public Image Limited fan, and you also
Yep,
mentioned the Sex Pistols.
yep.
And I asked this question to Dennis Remsing from Outspoken: Public Image Limited or Sex Pistols? What do you like better?
I would say I listened to Public Image Limited more at that time of my life, but going back as an adult, I think maybe Sex Pistol it's hard to say 'cause PIL
Interesting.
had great songs, and, I got to see PIL, on their tour with, who did they tour with? The Sugar Cubes and New Order.
Oh
I
wow.
believe that was '89 I saw them, and John Lydon was just like a man on fire. So that was a really interesting concert to go to. So I have a soft spot for PIL. But I
Okay.
mean, but Sex Pistols, man, come on. It's where it all
Yeah, and I'm a big John Lydon fan. Dennis and I kind of came to the consensus that as far as culturally, the impact that Sex Pistols had was probably bigger, and for that reason, they're probably, I guess you could say, more important. But I think musically, Public Image is like leaps and bounds beyond Sex Pistols. That's just my personal opinion.
yeah. No, but
Yeah.
I don't think, the rawness that was on the Sex Pistols album was just, like, unmatched, and so
Oh,
resonate
sure.
with so many people and had such an impact on music at the time and the whole punk scene, and so, yeah, it's like, how do you compare them? But
Yeah, it's almost like apples and oranges, but
yeah.
I guess if I had a preference, it would probably be Public Image. But going back to Guar, so then you started going to more shows after that, and you said your parents probably wouldn't have approved. Did they ever kind of pick up on what was going on, and how did they kind of respond to that
You
once they
know,
did?
eventually they did, I think, um, probably I started going in, I guess, '88, and I think by the summer of '89, I was being a little more forthcoming about where I was going and I had my license. But I also like didn't make a big deal of it. I was just kind of like casually, oh, going to City Gardens with, so and so. And I don't know if it tracked with them. I don't know if they knew exactly where City Gardens was because they weren't keyed into the punk rock scene at the time.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I think they would have been very concerned had they known what the scene was like there.
Wow. Okay. Well, and so you mentioned that that's where this kind of picks up in the book. Now, is writing something that you had always done, or was this kind of a new experience for you and you just kind of wanted to document all? Because, it's the book is semi autobiographical. Change the names and whatnot, but it's basically your story. So, was that something that was new to you, or was that like this was kind of a first time offering?
I had absolutely positively no interest in being a writer. I did not enjoy writing growing up. I was always more of, an A for creativity and a C for grammar kinda girl. Um, so I came to writing later in life. I think I got to a point that I was starting to realize, like, in my 50s that I still had stuff from my teen years that I needed to unpack and heal from, and writing really just helped me kinda process that, so it was part of my healing journey. I didn't kinda set out to be a writer, but when I conceived the story, I was like, "Oh, this could be interesting and cool and I think relatable." Um, but I didn't feel comfortable writing, like, a true memoir because who the fuck am I? Nobody knows who Cameran Sassman is. Why would they be interested in my story? So that's kind of why I went the semi-autobiographical route. So I fictionalized some things, and I wrote it in the spirit of a YA teen novel, although it's definitely, I think, more edgy than your typical YA teen novel, because like in real life, I curse a lot, and there's underage drinking and sex and, all the things that teenagers get up to. So it's kind of an unfiltered look at my teenage years.
Yeah, and there's a lot of heavy subject matter in there, and you had mentioned that your writing was something you'd never had any interest in, and it was kind of a way for you to process trauma and things that you had kind of packed away that you hadn't dealt with. Did you feel like this tremendous sense of relief whenever you were able to kind of release all those things into a creative output?
Oh, absolutely. I think, there were times where I was having a visceral, like bodily reaction to things like that. I could just like feel the weight of things leaving my body. And I hadn't realized just how much I had been holding on to until I started writing. And when I started writing, like the words just poured out of me. For the first book, I started writing in August of 2022, and I was done with my first draft in October of 2022. So that was what, 2, 3 months.
Wow.
So like once I started, it just,
Just
it all came out.
like a river.
Yep.
Wow. And you did that, you said in 2022, so that would have been around like, well, no, that would have been prior to, or that would have been after COVID, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we were still kind of in the thick of it. So I mean, the lockdown happened in 2020. And then for me, like I think of it in terms of like the school year. So like 2020, 2021 school year was just, we were online and doing Zooms and alternating, like kids were in person and then kids were online the next day. And then 2022, we were back in school, but it was an absolute shit show. I can't even begin. So I had like so much trauma going on from COVID and just being a teacher in that situation. It wasn't until like 2022, I think, that things had started to calm down a little bit.
Sure.
But I did get the idea for the story probably sometime while we were home on for COVID, because I had started going back and listening to, and we were home all the time. Like, what else is there to do? So I was
Right.
listening to all the music that I used to listen to when I was in high school, and going back to The Cure and REM and 7 Seconds and the Circle Jerks and the Dead Milkmen. So I was revisiting all that music at the time, and so a lot of that was coming back to me because of the music. I'm one of those people who, my memories are just so intrinsically locked into the music that I was listening to at the time. I can hear a song and go, oh, that was, 1986 when I was at, a party with, my girlfriends or whatever. So that's kind of how I mark time in my life, is by music. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because you can definitely recall where you were at when you heard a certain album. Like I remember when I heard Elliott False Cathedrals, like I was a freshman in college in the early 2000s, and it really kind of makes those experiences so much more like tangible, and you're able to connect to them so much more.
For sure.
Yeah. Now, as far as like your continuing show going experiences, did you have any like highlights as far as like this was an amazing show that I saw, and even like a crazy show going experience, because like Northeast has had some legendary bands come out of there, and I'm sure some incredible crazy shit has happened as well? What do you kind of remember of that?
So when I was in college, I went to UMass Dartmouth. So we used to go to Providence a lot to see shows. And I think one of my most memorable shows from that time, and it was probably around maybe 92, I saw Fear.
Oh,
And it was just Club Babyhead was the club. It's this little hole in the wall. It's like so much smaller than City Gardens. I wasn't like I was used to City Gardens, which was kind of big, bigger than you would have thought it would have been. But Babyhead with this little tiny club, and like it was just like wild. I mean, Leaving is a national treasure. Love Leaving.
he's kind of a crazy guy.
He is a crazy guy. So that was a really memorable show from that time. Uh, we went to a show in Cambridge in a basement of a Baptist church, and it was a hardcore band called the Holy Rollers. I don't know if anybody remembers the Holy Rollers. And
No,
they,
but
they,
I can
they
only
were not
imagine
religious.
they were not what.
They were not religious. Let's just put it.
Well, I was gonna say I can only imagine because the Baptists are like extremely militant, and like I could see them getting away with having a hardcore show at like a Unitarian church, which they
Yeah.
typically did, like there's the church up there in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, and but like. Maybe they tricked the church faculty because their name was the Holy Rollers.
There was a Baptist church in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and there I was with my friends seeing the Holy Rollers. So that was kind of a crazy show. I did Lollapalooza in 92.
Oh, wow.
Up in Mansfield at what was called Great Woods at the time. And that was the wildest show I have ever been to, even more wild than seeing Guar for the first time. It was
Really?
Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Ministry, Chili
God.
Peppers, Ice Cube. I can't even remember who else. However, let's see where it all started. Trying to remember. During the Pearl Jam set, we had some idiot climbing the rafters. And I was convinced this guy was going to fall and crash and die in front of everybody, and the concert was going to be stopped. But thankfully, they eventually got him down. So that was early in the day. And then I think it was when Ministry came on, all the people in the back with the lawn area, they started ripping up the sod and were just chucking sod down to everybody. It was like just all like stuck. I was like pulling out sod out of my bra for days, it felt like.
Oh, Jesus.
And then I think Ministry was towards the end, and then Chili Peppers came on. And this was the point in time where they would wear the
socks.
Hat. Well, the socks, and then they had the hats on with the fire coming out of the helmets. So they started ripping down the fence around Great Woods, and there were giant bonfires all in the lawn area. It was like Lord of the fucking Flies. I was like, if we get out of here unharmed, it's going to be a miracle. So yeah, that was a hell of a show, let me tell you.
Yeah. Whoa, shit. Okay. Yeah. That's I've never really had any experiences like that going to like big shows. It's always been hardcore, like, typically like fights, and a common theme on this show is fighting Nazis, like especially around that time period where it was like the neo-Nazi skinheads were very prevalent. But Lollapalooza, wow, that's crazy. Yeah. Did you watch the Woodstock 99 documentary?
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that. It's like in some ways it was a sign of things to come, but I still think at that time there wasn't, for lack of a better word, the toxic masculinity of it all was not as pervasive as it was by the time Woodstock 99 rolled around. I mean, that was a whole different energy. And,
oh yeah,
I think I wrote a little bit about it maybe in the second book. But, you know, every time I went to a show at City Gardens or one of these hardcore shows, like, as a woman, I always had this young woman, I always had this feeling like shit could go sideways at any moment.
Right.
And because it was like City Gardens, the pit, it was wild. And it just always felt like if something goes wrong, it's gonna go wrong in, like, a really bad way, and,
Right.
when I was, 16, 17 years old and on the scene, seriously, I was one of maybe 10 to 20 girls who was on the scene at City Gardens. There weren't a lot of us,
Right.
and, at the time, like, when you're 16 or 17, like, you think you're invincible and, nothing's ever gonna happen to me and, I'm with friends, I'm gonna be okay. But, like, looking back, like, it's a little bit scary and, um, seeing what eventually happened at something like, Woodstock '99, it was like that I think was just kind of building and building. But I watched the HBO documentary on that. I watched the, Netflix documentary on that, and it was just really horrifying, you know?
Yeah. Well, and then there were a lot of conditions too that kind of led up to all the ensuing mayhem and
Oh, yeah,
violence, like they were
the price of
completely.
water, the
Yeah.
fact that they did it on tarmac in the middle of
Oh, yeah.
um,
Yeah.
the lack of food and sanitary conditions. I mean, there were just like there wasn't one thing that went wrong. There were hundreds of
Well,
things, I
and
think.
to what you kind of comment on like the toxic masculinity, like they weren't really like hardcore centric bands, like there is a certain kind of etiquette within the hardcore scene,
Yeah,
to where like people, even if your beliefs are different or you're a different race or gender or sexuality or whatever, there is this kind of mutual level of respect. And I don't think that a lot of mainstream concert goers or, I don't want to say even artists, but, maybe. I mean, Limp Bizkit, like, whatever, like, but I think that that was kind of like, you know, people didn't really get it. I mean, you get like when people are kind of outside of the concert going scene. Here's kind of a prime example. Like whenever Nirvana hit, like I've been told like by countless people that Nirvana kind of ushered in like bro culture into like hardcore and like underground, shows and stuff like that. And that, it
well,
completely diametrically opposed kind of paths colliding at one time.
but Kurt Cobain himself, like, he would stop a show if people were being assholes or harassing girls. Like, he was not
Sure.
here for that. So I don't think it was Nirvana that ushered that in. I think it was the people who decided to get on
Right. That's
board.
what I meant. Yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Like, I
no.
had been, I think, a sophomore in college when Nirvana came out, and, I came home for Christmas that year, and I was talking to a friend of mine at a New Year's Eve party, and we were talking about City Gardens because he used to go and I used to go, and he's like, "Oh, Cam, you don't wanna go to City Gardens anymore, trust me." I'm like, "Why?" Like, I was, like, shocked. He goes, like, "All the football players and the cheerleaders and, all these people who, thought that, we were the fucking weirdos, like,
Dorks.
they're showing up at, hardcore shows at City Gardens," and it's like, "Really?" So,
Yeah.
I think Nirvana broke through in such a big way and, I don't know, brought along a lot of people that didn't fully understand and appreciate
Right.
what the scene meant and what it meant to those of us in the community as outsiders. Um,
Right.
so that's where it got problematic.
Yeah. That was no shade to Nirvana
Yeah.
whatsoever because you're absolutely right. Like I think Kurt kind of load load that kind of
Misogynistic
subculture and yeah. So uh yeah, it's interesting. Did you ever experience any sort of, maybe not necessarily violence or like aggression or anything, but like adversity for being a female within the hardcore scene, like, you know, just
Um,
shitty kind of behavior?
Yeah, at the Lollapalooza '92, I got groped in line for the bathroom a couple times, which was not cool. I mean,
No.
that when, I was watching the show in the stands, I was with a couple of guy friends, and I was the only girl with them. And, I felt okay when I was there, but standing in line in the bathroom, guys walking through the line to grab a beer and my ass. So it's like, really? So, yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Good grief. Um, now, okay, so some crazy concert going experiences. Did you have any other sort of like creative endeavors while you were involved in hardcore? Like, did you, run any zines or, do any sort of merch slinging or anything like that?
No, I didn't go down that road. You know, at the time, I was also a marching band geek, so I had, like, my 2 little worlds. I was, punk rock girl, and I was, a band geek, and,
Right.
like, marching we were very competitive, so a lot of my time was spent, either at practice or at competitions, and if I wasn't at competitions on weekends, then I was going to, see shows. So, like, that because it's a musical endeavor and, there's, I think, a creative outlet in that too.
Sure.
So that was kind of my creative outlet at the time. But as an adult, I uh, started writing. I study flamenco dancing. I just started taking Puerto Rican bomba dance classes. When I do my punk rock flea markets to sell my book, I started making these little record ornaments from tree cookies. I paint them and I make them look like records and I put them in a little jewel box. It looks like a record album. So that part of my creative spirit kind of came out a little bit later in life. But
Nice.
I got a guitar when I was, I think it was my senior year in high school. And my um, goal was to learn to play when I went to college. I wanted to take guitar classes. And then when I got to college, they wouldn't let me enroll in the guitar classes because I wasn't a music major or minor. So
Oh,
I was just like absolutely heartbroken.
yeah.
So I had a friend who taught me acoustic guitar for a little while, but I was really a nerd and really into good grades, and so I very much focused on my studies. So I, never really progressed much on. I can learn how to play the guitar. I want to learn to play the piano, and I want to learn to play the drums. So those are all things on my to-do list at the ripe old age of 54.
Oh, still. Okay. All right. All right. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like as you start getting older, you want to start checking all these things off your bucket list. There's so many things that I want to do even still. And you're an educator, you're a middle school science teacher. What kind of prompted you into that field? And then as kind of an additional question, what do you feel like the biggest challenges of being an educator in 2026 are today? Because I was thinking about it when I was kind of reading your story. Like when I was a kid, I was a fucking shit ass. I was a fuck off, and like I can only imagine what current day culture has kind of you know uh, um exacerbated about bad behavior within youths in school. Like, so what prompted you into that field, and then what do you
So
deal with?
yeah, so I've always kind of been a scientist. I don't know how to explain it. Like from even being a child in elementary school, like I always loved science. I was always very curious about things, about how the world worked. And then in third grade, we did a unit on marine biology. And I was like, oh, this is what I need to do. So from like third grade on, I wanted to go to Scripps in California. And that didn't happen, by the way. But I did wind up going to college for marine biology up here in New England. And I worked on a research boat. We used to go out on Buzzards Bay in the middle of winter in 14-foot seas. And I discovered that I get seasick So that was not the life for me. But
Mm.
while I was in college, I discovered that I was really good at chemistry. So I'm like, all right, well, marine biology is not going to pan out for me. So I'm going to go the chemistry route. So I wound up getting a double major in biology and marine biology and a minor in chemistry. And then I went on and I studied organic chemistry in grad school. And while I was in grad school, to earn my keep, I had to teach chemistry labs. And it was then that I kind of realized that I was a really good teacher. The lab coordinator used to send all the other TAs to my class to observe me. I won some award at Boston College for teaching. I don't remember what the stupid thing was, but anyway. So I kind of got the sense like, oh, okay, I'm not too bad at this, but I still wasn't sold on the teaching part. But then I guess that it was the year I was graduating from BC. I was miserable in grad school. I'm going to be writing a book about that soon.
Oh.
I was miserable in grad school. I had planned on getting my PhD, and it was just a horrific experience for all kinds of reasons. It was an old boys club. The misogyny was rampant. My lab mates were assholes. My advisor was a jerk. It was just a bad situation. And I decided I was going to leave with my master's. And the weekend of my graduation, my parents came up and my mother had a stroke. So it was just one of those moments in life where you go, shit, life is too short. She survived it, but it was kind of that moment for me. It was like, well, what do I really want to do with my life? Like this whole experience in chemistry made me miserable, and I didn't think I wanted to continue down that path, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I started working at a biotech company in Cambridge for a couple years, and I realized I kind of missed the teaching piece of it. So then I decided to go back and go for my teaching license and take all of those classes. But I didn't want to teach high school because I kind of like a lot of areas of science. And I felt like with middle school, I could touch on biology and physics and chemistry and earth science and all the different areas. And at the time, like I was in my late 20s and I looked like I was probably 16. And I'm like, you know what? I do not want to be teaching high schoolers and have them look at me like a peer, because being a first year teacher is really, really hard. And, if kids don't respect you, and
they'll walk all over you. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not here for that. I need to be taller than the children. So, but that didn't work out for me, because now I teach 8th graders and half of them are taller than me anyway. But I've got gray hair, and so I'm respectable.
Crazy pituitary glands or something.
Yeah, all the things. So I started teaching middle school, and I have not regretted a day, except during the pandemic, where I was like, I might need to leave this profession because it was awful.
Wow.
The pandemic nearly broke me. I had a couple kids that were just so awful. And my therapist at the time, she's like, well, can you get out of it? I'm like, the math ain't mathin' when you look at my teacher's pension. I'm like invested so far now that if I left, like it would not make financial sense at all. So like, it's got to like grind through it. But it's thankfully gotten better. But I still think social media has a huge influence on kids, and trends that they see on places like TikTok, like
6'7". I still don't know what that is.
Nobody.
What is it?
Well,
what is it?
It started from a song, some rap song, and then it kind of, I don't know, it morphed into something else. I don't even know. I
frequently consult urbandictionary.com, and I don't think I've been able to get a clear definition of what it is. If
6'7",
if you're,
I mean, just like, what are you doing? And then they make weird noises.
If you're Gen Z or Gen Alpha, Post in the comments here. What is 6'7"? I have no idea.
I have
But
no idea.
yeah, no. I was a
Exciting.
horrible fucking kid. Like in certain classes, I guess it would depend on like who else was in the class. Like if like I didn't really have a lot of friends in certain classes, I wouldn't like fuck off or anything. But like, oh my god, like my computer science class and like my algebra 2 or 3 class, we like it was just all the dudes and we were just all horrible fuckers. Like we were just the worst, So and this was 25, 26 years ago, so like I can only imagine what it's
They
like
see
now.
things on TikTok like, all right, we're gonna take the paper towel dispenser off the wall, and they'll videotape themselves doing it, and then wet the paper towel roll and try to get it to stick to the wall. And we're gonna video ourselves and put it on TikTok.
Oh god.
And it's like, what are you doing? Everybody is gonna see it, and we're gonna know it was you. Like, what are you doing?
Right. Right.
The thing I think that's hard is, a lot of the bullying that takes place online, but then it has repercussions for the school day.
Sure.
And it's hard as educators to kind of manage those things that are happening outside of school that are beyond our control, but they do make their way,
Right.
into the classrooms. So that's really hard. I think, the pressure on girls, especially, to, look a certain way and, wear certain clothes. And I mean, that was true, when I was in high school too, but I think it's just amplified so much and it's so present and they're seeing it constantly because they're constantly on their phones. And, I think the technology and their iPhones were helpful during the pandemic when we were in lockdown because that was the only way they were communicating. I
Sure.
get it. But I think after we came out of lockdown, they were still so dependent on that, that continued to be, a struggle.
Yeah. Are you one of those teachers too? Because half these times I'll see like, kids like filming their teachers and stuff like that. And personally, because I considered a career in education at one point, if I were a teacher, there would be a basket at the front of that classroom and all the cell phones would go in that basket and would not leave until the class was over. So are
Yeah,
you one of the
we do that in our school. Some of us have they're like calculator holders hung on the walls and kids drop theirs off. But I mean, kids are going to be sneaky if they want to be sneaky. And I think what I've learned as a teacher is like, I can't sit back behind my desk and trust that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So I'm a teacher who is always up and always circulating. And I think it really helps to also make connections with kids.
Sure.
And they're more likely to respect you and those kind of boundaries and not using their technology or their cell phones inappropriately when you can make those connections. And I also think my experience in the punk rock community, like I was one of those fringe kids myself. And so I just have a real soft spot for some of those harder kids
Sure.
connect with. And I come in with my, my Cure t-shirts on or my City Gardens t-shirt or my Dead Milkman t-shirt. So, just to let them know, like, you know what, I get it. I see you. I know this time of life is hard. And I think when teachers can make those connections with kids, that managing those kind of things in the classroom become a lot easier. Still not easy, but easier.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
that's my strategy anyway.
Yeah, and that's a great one. I came to find that the more that the teachers kind of were able to, like you said, connect with us, it's like they genuinely cared. We had some teachers that were just straight cold and just didn't really give a shit about knowing about us beyond our names and where we sat in the classroom. So I think
know that, man. They clock that right out.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a German teacher that was awesome. Like he was amazing and like he would show us movies in German and like we would, talk about them and stuff and, it's just be cool, but I would think that, you'd still have to have that that disciplinarian attitude at times. I mean, I'm sure it sucks, but
Yeah. Well,
you can only be their friend so much.
yeah. Well, the other thing I find too, like, and I'm not a yeller, and I usually try to be very calm and measured.
Hmm.
But when I lose my shit, they know I mean business.
Yeah.
So it doesn't happen often, but when it has to happen, it will happen. And, just kind of regrounding everybody and,
Right.
setting those boundaries because middle schoolers, especially, they're boundary pushers. They're trying to see just what can we get away with. And,
Right.
and generally, like, I'm just kind of chill, but I still hold them to very high expectations academically. So I
Hmm.
think the fact that I do have those high academic expectations, but I also like my classroom's a chill classroom. We listen to music,
Oh,
sometimes
cool.
they get to choose, who they're sitting with or what projects they're working on and giving them choice, I think makes them more compliant in some ways, because they trust you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We had a question here. Tim Cohen, Trivikram Das from the band 108. He says, oh, wait. No, he had one before this. Hang on. What did you play in the marching band? Drum? Oh, and for
Can
anybody that's listening,
you
I can't see it.
I played the cymbals.
Oh, cymbals. Okay.
For my first 2 years, I was a flute player and I was an awful flute player, so I got demoted to the drum line, and I played the cymbals for 2 years, and then I joined the band front, so I had the pom poms and I did the flags and everything. So
Tim says, I like this show. Thank you. Oh, I like that you're always at this show, Tim. And one of these days, Tim, you're going to come on the show. He's great. Let's see. He's got one more question. Do you think traditional schools will survive into the future? I know he's an educator as well, so these are some really good
um,
questions.
I think so, yes. And some people might not like my answer to this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think schools provide not only education, but we provide childcare, for lack of a better term. And I think our economy would fall apart if suddenly kids had to be home all the time again. And I think
Mm.
that would really impact women, especially. Um, so I think, there's a lot you can do online, education wise, but it's not the same. And I can tell you that because I did it for a year where I had students who I never saw in person, and it's not the same. They are not getting the same level of care and education as when you're in person and making connections. And I hope the thing we learned from the lockdown during COVID was we can't do that again, because those social connections for children are so
Huge.
important. It messed up a lot of kids not having
Sure.
that social connection. Um, Kids, so many still struggling with anxiety and depression and social isolation, and it's just like this hangover from COVID over
Yeah.
the last 5 years. So I think from a mental health standpoint, it would not be good to just expect kids to always learn online. I don't think it's feasible.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely, I had an opportunity to homeschool when I was a kid, and this can kind of tie into the Star Wars thing, because when I was growing up, Star Wars, well, okay. So Star Wars, I don't know if you remember this or not, but they did books in the 90s by this author, Timothy Zahn.
Yep, I read it.
Yeah. Okay. So you do know. But there was a period where Star Wars, and even in that period, I would say Star Wars was not cool. Like it was not cool to be a Star Wars fan. Like you got looked at like you were weird. I personally got picked on by a bunch of the kids in the school, and I remember I had to go and talk to a counselor or a fucking psychologist because I was like throwing away all my Star Wars shit or like packing it in boxes and stuff, you know? And so I was considering a homeschooling path for a while, but then I was just like, you know what? I need to like just man up and like just deal with the shit, you know, because like there's always going to be bullies and there's always going to be shitty people. And so, you know, like I think that being able to deal with those social situations in person, because I mean if you're in a digital realm, like if I'm on Zoom or something, I just turn off Zoom, I just go away, you know. But like when I'm actually like face to face with a person and I have to deal with them, then I have to have some sort of tools to be able to navigate in the real world.
Yep. Yeah. And, the year that I did teach virtually, in a normal school year, I would say, a month in, 2 months in, like I'm feeling some real connections with my students. But the year that I was fully online, it wasn't until maybe December or January that I felt like I was starting to get to know these kids. So it's harder and it
Yeah,
takes longer. And you can do it, but it's not easy.
sure.
And just missing out on that formative time of your life. And, we look at all the little ones who were trying to do Zoom in elementary school. Reading in first grade, learning to read in first grade is the most important year of your education. And those kids who are trying to learn to read essentially on their own behind a screen, like it was not good. So we still have
No.
kids that we're working the gaps out, who are struggling readers. I mean, eighth
Right.
graders who are reading at a second grade level. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Thanks, globalists. You really fucked us on that one. Well, okay. So, you know, with your writing trajectory, do you plan on writing anymore? I think you mentioned that you wanted to write something else, but like, do you plan on writing any more in the vein of fiction or continuing on with the story? Maybe like, you know, 20 years later, you know, into the future type situation?
yeah. So I think in book 2, I left enough breadcrumbs that I could continue the series if I wanted to. Um, but I'm not sure I'm gonna go down that road. Maybe at some point. But I just finished writing my first historical fiction novel. I wrote a book that takes place in 1964 in Puerto Rico, and it's about a young woman who was born with a birth injury, and she's got significant mobility issues, and she wants to become a musician. And her parents are very overprotective, and she's also secretly a Beatles fan and likes American rock and roll and music. And her father is kind of like very anti-American culture, and so it's this whole kind of musical threads, but another kind of coming of age story. So I just finished my first draft in January. I'm hoping to maybe get this one traditionally published. So I'm trying to do all the right things to eventually get a literary agent and hopefully get a book deal. I'm definitely going to be writing a book about, I would say, like mid to late 90s era music that's going to be about my grad school experience. And it was around that time of music where we had a lot of artists, like female women in rock,
That was a really good era for
Alanis
female.
Morissette
Yeah.
and Hole and
Slater
Liz
Kinney.
Phair and
Yeah.
Rock Girls and, Bikini Kill, all those.
Yeah.
So that's brewing, but right now I'm fully in the most recent book that I've worked on. I've written some screenplays, pilots for in between shows. So we were talking about that earlier
Yeah.
before we were on. I had entered it into a couple of screenplay competitions, and I got some really good feedback. And I kind of made it far in one competition. But like I was saying, I don't think the powers that be fully appreciate the dedication and passion of the punk rock community and don't understand what a big block of people we are, and I think there would be a
Yeah.
lot of people who would be interested in, punk rock coming of age story, and maybe someday that'll make it to the small screen.
It would be really interesting to see, because and another thing we were talking about, like 10,000 Saints, like that was a movie, a book. It was a book before it was a movie, and that, kind of tried to capture that late 90s, mid late 90s, like, straight edge hardcore culture. I thought it was kind of whatever, but like, it would be really interesting to see like a mini series, like, like maybe 6 or 8 episodes of like a, kind of something that takes place within that time period, something done by like A24, like one of those kind of like high-end indie art studios or
Right,
something
right.
like that. I think that would be interesting. Green Room, have you ever seen Green Room?
No, no.
Oh, that's another one that kind of takes place in punk and hardcore, but it's more like a horror type thriller movie. But A24 put that one out, and it's really interesting. I think En Masse, though, I don't know how you feel about it, but like when they do movies based on punk rock and hardcore, it's always not very accurate.
No, I think they lean into the stereotypes, and you know, it, it's not authentic.
If you didn't live it, you wouldn't know.
Right, right.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think,
absolutely.
if my story ever makes it to the small screen, like that is something that I am going to be vehement about. That,
Yeah,
we're not playing the stereotype. And
right.
when I think what's interesting about my story, granted I'm biased, but when we think about that time in music history and the hardcore scene, like it was so male heavy and male dominated that, I think it would be refreshing to get a female's point of view
Sure.
on it and the
Yeah,
experience of a young woman in that scene. Because I think so many of the stories and so much of the music at the time was told through the voice of young men.
yeah. No doubt. No doubt. And to kind of tie it into that, like, we were talking about Star Wars. You're a big Star Wars fan. What do you feel about the current state of Star Wars and the latest iterations that Disney has put out in film and in television?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I've consumed most of it.
Okay.
I haven't watched, I never watched the Clone Wars animated
The
series.
animated one? Okay.
Yeah, so I didn't watch Bad Batch, but like all the other things, I really like The Mandalorian. I'm loving Pedro Pascal. Um, I think Andor is some of the best TV that has ever been created.
Best TV, not just Star Wars, but
The
TV.
best
Yes.
TV ever created. Tony Gilroy, fucking genius. The
Yes.
storytelling was masterful. It met our current moment in the United States. I just think it was really, really well done. And Rogue One is another, I think, tremendous movie. It is one of my favorites out of all the trilogies.
Sure.
But I liked Ahsoka. Um, what else? I thought the Obi-Wan series was okay. Trying to think.
Boba Fett.
Boba Fett, yeah, that one was okay too. But I would say Mandalorian, Andor.
Acolyte? Did you watch
I
Acolyte?
I thought we didn't finish Acolyte. I don't think I made it
I
to the
heard
end.
it was bad.
No. But I think, I get in arguments with my son all the time about um the latest trilogy and Ray. Uh and I think a lot of people don't appreciate that with Carrie Fisher dying, like what impact that had on the story that they were able to tell.
Yeah.
And I don't think Kathleen Kennedy delivered,
No. I don't
unfortunately.
think she understood the property.
Yeah.
I think that her I think that her whole objective was her kind of messaging and pandering, and that she kind of missed out on the opportunity to really tell a good story with like good, well-rounded characters. Totally squandered the opportunity to have all the legacy characters like Han, Leia, and Luke be on screen all at once, and like everybody was fucking depressing. Like fucking, Han Solo was just a fucking slog, and Luke was a fucking slog, and like Leia was just, she was basically doing the same thing that everybody was doing the same thing that they'd been doing. It was like there wasn't a lot of growth. It was just stagnant.
Yeah, no, I agree, but I also think they were dealt a bad hand with Carrie Fisher passing away
Sure.
mid filming, and I think they tried to cobble something together, but I don't think it worked. And there are things I love about some of the newer movies in the newer trilogy, but I think as a whole, there were a lot of things that they missed. Like I thought the first one was tremendous.
Oh, you liked it?
Yeah, I did. I came away feeling good from that one.
Okay. Yeah, I did too, even though it was pretty much a beat for beat retread of New Hope.
Yeah, I know. But I think for me, like that nostalgia piece, like Star Wars came out in 77. I was 5. I was in kindergarten. And like, you don't know, Jay, for a little girl where all you ever read are fucking fairy tales, where the princess is saved, by the knight in shining armor.
Sure.
To see Princess Leia as this like princess badass who saves herself, who doesn't, need other people to rescue her. Like, you don't know what that meant to 5-year-old me.
Oh, I'm sure. It was huge, yeah.
And so there's like, for me, I think A New Hope, that's top of the top.
Oh, for sure.
And the beats in what I can't even remember what was the one with Ray, the first one called
Force Awakens.
Force Awakens, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought it was fun.
Okay.
And then I think the second one, there were things I liked about it, but I don't know, the third one fell off.
Oh God. My sister and I walked out of the third one. We're like, that was fucking awful. It was terrible.
Did you ever watch the behind the scenes documentary?
No, not on that one. No.
I felt better about the second movie after watching that.
Really?
I still were things I didn't like, but I think they explained a lot more about Luke's story and the choices that they made. And that was another situation where Rian Johnson came in for who directed the first and third one.
J.J. Abrams.
J.J. Abrams, because he had didn't he have like a family emergency? Something happened with his son, so he had to pull out on the second movie.
Yeah, that's right.
So you had the combination of J.J. Abrams not being able to have continuity from the first movie to the second movie, and you had Carrie Fisher dying. So, to be fair, they were dealt a shitty hand.
Yeah.
Tried to make the best of it, but
though I do feel like they should have mapped it out a little better. I think that, what Kevin Feige was doing with the Marvel series, like that was like a 10-year story arc that they'd been planning up to like Thanos and, Infinity War and stuff, and I think they just kind of winged it going into this Star Wars thing, which is, kind of an odd choice considering you've got a $4 billion property and like all this pre-established lore, Yeah.
When I write, every time I write my books, like I always have the end game in mind. Like, because how can you write motivation for characters if you don't know where they're going?
Right. Precisely. Yeah. And, like with, you're talking about like, kind of stronger female characters. I grew up and loved Aliens. I love Ripley as a character. Sigourney Weaver is probably my favorite actress. And, the Terminator, Sarah Connor, like all of these, like, like badass, like capable women. But here's the kind of the problem I have with Rey is that she starts amazing and she ends amazing. With like Sarah Connor, she's a diner waitress, she's kind of like, timid and scared, and then she has this total transformation at the end of Terminator. She's helping out Kyle Reese. She's like, "Get on your feet, let's go," and then she's like, "You're terminated, fucker," like, and then she, like, the second movie, like, completely different character. Same with Ripley, where it was just like, she was essentially a trucker, a trucker in space, and then she, learns how to be like completely capable, and then she's in at the end of the story, she's like kicking ass, and like, that to me was amazing, and like I felt like we never got that with like Ray, and then it was just like, oh, and what's your
argument I get in with my son?
Oh, is this kind of his sentiment?
Yeah, he agrees with you.
Okay.
She starts off like by herself on a planet. She's scrappy, and I don't think she got where she got without, kind of having that internal drive and that kind of scrappiness. So
Sure.
I don't know.
I kind of wish we had seen that though, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it just seems like it kind of comes out of nowhere, and then it was like, oh, what's your name? Ray? I remember the Ray Skywalker part, like, because I saw it first in Hollywood with some friends, and the whole theater was like, fuck this, like, fuck you, like, come on, and I I remember when she kissed Adam Driver, her and Kylo Ren kissed, I was like fucking throwing up that bullshit. This wasn't even earned. I was like, come on. Anyway, with Andor though, like I think even I told my mom, I was like, you could watch this and enjoy it. Like, you don't even have to be a Star Wars fan, and you could, completely be immersed in it. It's that damn good,
Well, the political intrigue, I think the fact that they focused on the storytelling and not all the special effects, it was a human show,
yes,
human story. And I think, today with all of our capabilities with CGI and whatever, it's easy to get away from the humanness of stories. And
yes,
I think they really held on to that and
oh yeah,
gave us a lot.
Yeah. And one of the pluses of that series, I think, is there was nothing in regards to the Jedi. Nothing. Like, unpopular opinion, I'm not a big fan of Jedi and all the Force, like, wizardry in the movies. I like the Star Wars of the Star Wars. I like watching X-Wings and TIE Fighters and Star Destroyers and Death Stars and shit like that. That's what I really vibe with, And to be truthful, there wasn't a lot of that in there either. But like you said, the kind of the human-centered stories, and like the acting was just top notch. Like everybody in that was just amazing. I can't even really think of a bad performance in it, Yeah.
I didn't mind the Force and the Jedi until they brought in the midichlorians. Like, dude.
So, well, we won't go there. I got another question here from Mr. Tim Cullen. Tim, you need to start doing some super chats here, buddy.
I got to put on my glasses here.
Okay. Holy shit. Okay. Perhaps modern education should increasingly focus on curriculum that focuses on social skills, ethics, learning how to have fun safely, learning how to respectfully interact and collaborate with others, a new kind of childcare. What do you think? What educational approaches do you favor for young children? Waldorf, Montessori, or something new, others? What is unique about your approach to teaching science? What was it about your teaching style that gave you accolades and made people it doesn't continue there, but I don't know.
Oh, that's a lot of questions.
Yeah, want to try that one?
Start somewhere.
Okay.
So the Waldorf, I actually wrote a paper on the Waldorf Montessori method, and I taught in a district that took a lot from Waldorf schools, because in I can't even say it, Waldorf schools, teachers stay with kids year after year. So you might get a group of, kindergartners or first graders, and you're going to stay with them through fifth grade. So my first teaching job, we called it looping. So I would get fifth graders and stay with them through sixth grade. And there's certainly benefits to that because you really get to know your students. They really get to know their teachers well. But then sometimes if you've got relationships that aren't working between student and teacher or students and students, like that can get a little tricky
Sure.
sometimes. But I did see a lot of benefit to that. And like what was nice, I'd have my kids into through fifth grade. And then at the beginning of sixth grade, they knew the routines. They knew my expectations. I didn't have to spend the first 2 weeks of school going through all the processes because they knew what my expectations were. So you could actually cover more ground that way. And then a few years ago in my current district, we had a population of students coming up. There was some failure of the reading program in the elementary school. And we had this big cohort of students that had a combination of language-based learning disabilities and gaps in the reading because of a program failure. So I stayed with those students, seventh grade through eighth grade. And it's just really, I think, nice to kind of see them grow, but also them having that same group of kids with them from one year to the next builds a cohesiveness, and that is important for their social emotional growth. I think in like the middle school level, we're able to have students kind of potted in teams, which I think is helpful for that social emotional piece. But then when they get to high school, it's like every kid for themselves. There isn't that team thing anymore. And I think if they could build that into the high school model somehow, but it gets like so tricky because there's so many different levels and different course tracks that kids are taking based on what they want to do for college, that you kind of miss on that cohesive piece, which can be important to social emotional development. I don't know if that answered all the questions.
Hopefully. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good question. What are your thoughts on the Star Wars Holiday Special from 1978?
Oh my god, I watched it in real time. I couldn't even tell you what was on it.
You saw it in real time.
I saw it in real time, yeah, on TV.
Wow.
I remember the Wookiees, and that's about it. Oh my, I haven't.
They did have the introduction of Boba Fett in there. It was prior to Empire Strikes Back. They did an animated segment of the show, and Boba Fett shows up. That's the only good thing about it, though. The rest of it's dog shit.
That was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I have not seen it in years.
You can watch it on YouTube for free, and I want to say even Disney Plus has it at this point. But
you know what was good on Disney Plus? There was like a Lego Star Wars Christmas.
Oh, really?
Was delightful. That I loved. I recommend.
Okay. Okay. All right. One thing to kind of cap it off about Star Wars, I wish that they had gone from the whole, to speak of Timothy Zahn earlier, like there is so much that they could have mined from those stories, and granted, I feel like if they had wanted to do something with those stories as far as retelling them in a cinematic format, they would have had to have done it way earlier. Like, you could have probably gotten away with it in like the 90s, even probably mid 90s or something like that, but they didn't do that. So you could have taken and continued from that arc and done something 30 years later with that canon, but they didn't want to do that because they're fucking lazy. And
they're bringing Thrawn into is it the Ahsoka series that they're bringing?
Yeah.
I mean, that came from the Timothy Zahn books.
Yeah, right? But it's a completely new, again, like they just took these templates for these characters and they just worked them into their canon. And it just pisses me off because it's like, you've got all these people that did all this hard work, all these like acclaimed science fiction writers that put hours and hours and days and months of their own lives into creating these additional stories, which George Lucas said were originally canon. He was like, yeah, go crazy, do what you want with it, and I'll consider it canon, And then it's just like, Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger and Dave Filoni and all these fuckers come along and are like, nah, we're gonna do something different. All your shit's going in the dumpster. Like that's frustrating.
Yeah. I do like Dave Filoni though. He worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I'm a big fan
Oh,
of that
did he?
series too.
The animated one?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, not the M. Night Shyamalan.
No. No, that never happened in my world.
See, that's how I feel about the Star Wars sequels and even like Star Trek. Holy shit, I don't even want to get started on Star Trek. But when you mentioned that you were a marine biologist, I thought about Star Trek 4 because it's affectionately called the one with the whales.
Well, right.
Like yeah. I love that one. But I guess one question that I could ask too is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
I think, I growing up, I always had this sense that like I was different. I kind of struggled socially. Um, and I think, especially like when I got to high school, I don't know if it was a crisis of confidence or I didn't have self-confidence. And I think I had a hard time setting boundaries with some people. And I think I would tell my younger self it's okay to set boundaries because I didn't know how quite to do that, and I didn't have the confidence in myself to say, you know what, if I set boundaries and this person doesn't respect it, then that's on them. So I
As
wish
far as boundaries, like people mistreating you or
um
taking advantage of you, or
I think a little bit of that. I think in some of the relationships that I was in, I didn't assert myself to set those boundaries, and that kind of led to unhealthy patterns in relationships, romantic relationships. So that's something I wish my younger self knew.
And I can relate there too, especially in the romantic relationships. It came to the point where I would beg and pine and like, why aren't you talking to me, or why don't you do this or anything like that. And if I don't have anything positive to say, I just don't say anything. And like I found myself being constantly disrespected, and so if kind of the first sign of that, I'm just like, I'm out. I respect myself more than this to let you treat me like a fucking doorstop or shit on me, like I'm done. So but that's a great answer, actually. That's really good. As far as other media you're consuming besides Star Wars, like, what are you listening to? What are you watching? What are you reading?
All right, what am I watching right now? I'm watching The Pit. I'm watching, I want to call it The Adventures of Dunk and Egg, but that's not what it's called. The Night of the Realm. It's a Game of Thrones series, HBO.
Okay.
I've been watching that. What else? Just finished Stranger Things. Big Stranger Things fan.
Okay.
So that, like, the nostalgia factor on that show, like that was prime middle school years for me. So all that 80s nostalgia, that's right up my alley. What else?
But nobody had a Thing poster growing up. Nobody.
No.
That's what pisses me off. I was like, nah. I was like, nobody liked that movie in that era.
I don't remember that movie. I don't think I ever saw it. But
that's some homework for you.
Okay, I'm gonna take note of that one.
It's one of the best fucking movies.
Is
ever.
It?
Oh yeah.
But they've done a few remakes of that. Do you have a specific year version? I need to
don't watch the 2011 one. Watch the 1982 one with Kurt Russell. That's the only one that really matters. They had one in the 50s, The Thing from Another World. That one's kind of cheesy, but like the 1982 one, it's masterful filmmaking. Like, it's scary as shit. Yeah, I think you'd really be into it. But yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, highly recommended. But so the Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yep. So that's what I'm watching. What else? Listening to. Um, since the last book I was working on took place in Puerto Rico, like I've been listening to a lot of Latin music, and I started listening to Bad Bunny's "Debí Tirar Más Fotos" last January. So like I've been listening to that nonstop.
Okay.
um,
Your family is Puerto Rican then?
my birth mother was Puerto Rican.
Puerto Rican. Okay.
I'm adopted, so I didn't know of my ancestry until later in life. So I
Okay.
didn't know I was Puerto Rican until my 40s. So that's
Oh
part of the
wow.
reason that I was writing the most recent book, just to learn more about my people and the culture. And um, so I've really I've been reading a lot of the history, the personal stories and memoirs of people who grew up in Puerto Rico, who came to the upper 50 and lived in the as part of the diaspora. So I've been consumed in that world.
With Puerto Rican culture.
Yes, yeah.
Very cool. Very
So
cool. Ricky Martin and Jennifer Lopez and
yeah, but because my book took place in the 1960s, like I'm going like way back
way
with Latin
back. Okay.
music. So
Okay.
all pre-salsa era kind of music. So
Nice.
yeah,
Very cool.
it's been
Very cool.
interesting. I've learned a lot, but I also there's a lot of rock and roll in my new book too. So it's a balance. I did a lot of Beatles research as well.
Here's the
Um,
books in between shows, the A sides and the B sides. Where can we find those online? I always like to encourage people that if the artists are selling their merchandise through their own sites to go through there instead of Amazon. And I understand you have a .com, so you can purchase them there.
So you can order them on Amazon, but if people don't want to order on Amazon, you can contact me on Instagram at In Between Shows, and I have author copies that I can send people's way.
Very cool. Very
Yep.
cool. What's I'm always inspired when I see people write because, that's something that I have always wanted to do. I've done a few screenplays, but I've always kind of wanted to do like a novel or something like that. And it just seems like it requires so much discipline and so much commitment and just focus, like razor sharp focus. And I sometimes feel like I don't have that. So I really commend people when they can be able to commit that to paper and just produce something amazing and excellent.
Yep. I loving writing. Didn't think, in my 50s that I would be writing books. It's the last thing I thought I was going to be doing, but I'm finding a lot of joy in it, and it's a creative outlet, and it's a good way to process things that maybe you're holding on to. So I'm loving
Sure.
it, and I'm meeting cool people and going on fun podcasts and getting out there and connecting with the punk rock community. And that's also been a joy of writing these books. I do all these little punk rock flea markets up and down the East Coast, and just getting to talk music with people and reminiscing about the good old days of punk rock in the 80s. Good
Yeah.
stuff.
Hell yeah. Connection. It's all
Yeah,
about that connection.
all about
Yeah. Well, Cameron, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. And I want to thank everybody that has attended the stream, specifically Tim Cohen there, buddy. Come on, man. The
one with the question.
invitation's here.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got it. I mean, everybody else, virtually everybody else from 108 has been on this show. So you gotta help me complete the set, man. You gotta come on here. But we had mentioned we may do it when I'm down in Gainesville one of these days. So who knows? We'll see. But I want to thank everybody that has attended this stream, and please support Cameron at inbetweenshows.com. You can also follow her on Instagram at inbetweenshows and purchase a book, pick one up, do it, support. That's what we do here. Like we're all, at least in the hardcore community, we all kind of kind of try to take care of each other and support each other's endeavors. So please do that. And my endeavor, I have a merchandising company, Hell's Heart Merch Co. Going over to hellsheartco.bigcartel.com. As you can see there in the corner, there's a little QR code. So all you got to do is take your phone and scan it. Or if you're watching on your phone, just go on over to the website, use the code podcast for 20% off your entire order. Pick up a shirt. Do you like movies? Do you like hardcore? We've got both those aforementioned things on there, and they're really soft Bella Canvas and Next Level Tri-Blend t-shirts. I can't wear shitty t-shirts anymore. That's why I don't sell them. So get one. Don't feel like you're being itchy with some Gildan bullshit. So and everybody, like I mentioned before, like, comment, share, subscribe, click on that bell for notifications. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give us a follow and give us a rating. That'd be excellent. It's all free too. Like, if you got to spend money on t-shirts, like, you can, do that, and it's free. It's a good way of supporting. It helps us out in the algorithm, and it helps all these artists be able to be discovered because, there's more traffic here, more people see it, and we all win. We all win. So, all right. Everybody, I want to thank you guys so much for attending. Namaste. God bless. Be good. Thank you so much, Cameron.
Thank you.
Hell's heart, life's a game. Money, power, the price of fame.